This is Real Housewives of the Kingdom, a sweet space where you'll hear from the hearts of fellow housewives in the kingdom of God. Some just like you and some really different in various walks of life. We will talk about how God is walking with us through the good and the hard. I pray you'll be encouraged and entertained as we laugh and sometimes cry together. Most of all, I hope it reminds you we're in this together and you are not alone. Today, I'm chatting with Jen Tomasick, who is a sweet friend. We both worked at Disneyland together as dancers in various shows and parades. Jen loves the Lord and is a fire wife and mama of two. She's currently a makeup artist for Disney events. She shares her heart and story with us today, talking about body image and how it impacts us through various seasons of life. From awkward teenage years to what it's like to bury your midriff in front of hundreds of thousands of people a day, to medical emergencies, changing hormones, and body changes as we move into different phases of life. She has some great nuggets of wisdom that God has shown her over the years. So much so that this episode will be cut into 2 parts because I just didn't want to cut anything out that we talked about. Part 2 will air next week. I know you'll be so encouraged by our conversation. Small note before we begin. While we don't get super graphic, we do discuss having babies, sex in marriage, insecurities, and struggles that surround having a very large chest, as well as details from her medical emergency and surgery. So if your little ones are with you, I'd pop in your headphones or maybe just listen a different time. Hello, everybody, and welcome to Real Housewives of the Kingdom. I am so excited for you to meet my guest for today. She is a very dear friend of mine, and actually she was my husband's friend first, but as soon as I came into the picture, she adopted me in as friend and family, and so I just love her, and I am going to let her introduce herself. Welcome, Jen.
Good morning, everyone. Good morning. My name is Jen Tomasick. In truth be told, yes, I was his name Kevin, I think? Yeah. I was Kevin's friend first, but then Caroline stole my heart and it was like, BFFs forever. Let's go.
Mm-hmm.
To be your pod, even though that was your Halloween costume when I met you, but that was
yes.
I stole you. I'm so excited to be here and I'm so privileged and honored to be able to speak to you guys today and to visit with Caroline. We just got to see each other, recently when I came out to Florida with my family, and it's made me long for this friendship that I miss so much because you're now on the East Coast. But anyway, I live in Orange County in California, so I'm all the way on the other side of the coast, and I'm a makeup artist and a mom. I'm a literal soccer mom and all that goes with it. And I'm married to a firefighter. So I have a very busy life where I'm basically like a married single person. Hooray!
Yeah, fire wives, it's so crazy. If people don't understand, when your husband is working, he's gone all day, all night for several days.
And if there's then a strike team, it's 21 days. It's like,
yeah. Which if you live in Southern California, that happens all the time.
All the time.
With the wildfires.
Constantly burning.
Yes. And the pee in a pod thing that she's talking about, I'm just going to comment about it. Because I have a photo in my house, in my hallway from that party. Yeah. It was one of the first Disney events. So my husband and Jen worked at Disneyland together. That's how they knew each other. And then when I started working there, I guess I might have even been before I started working there that your party was, I think. Yeah. But anyway, Kevin brought me along to this party so I could meet his friends. It was a Halloween party and we didn't have Halloween costumes. And so we literally stopped by Pick and Save and picked up matching flannel pajamas that had they were bright yellow with these 2 little peas inside of a pod, and it was a girl pea and a boy pea together in the pod, and we wore those pajamas to their Halloween party.
So cute.
And that was the first day that I met Jen, and it was.
And that tells you, just by the fact that you merely said Pick and Save, that tells you how long ago it was, because now it's Big Lots and it has been. Yes. Nobody knows Pick and Save anymore.
No, I know. I still, every time I see Big Lots, like Pick and Save is
Pick and Save. Always.
Yes. Yeah.
Forever and a day.
Yeah. So that is how we met. And another one of the things that we both have in common is we love Jesus. We walk with the Lord. And that is something that, so not only did we all have in common working at Disney and my husband in common, but we all have that faith. And so that is something else that has really bonded us because iron sharpens iron, as you all know. So today I'm having Jen on the show. We are talking about body image, as you know, this month. And so I wanted to chat with her. Me being a performer and her being a performer, we've definitely had an interesting view on body image from just kind of having a scrutinizing eye from the time you're small on your body is a very different thing than even I think your average person who maybe doesn't have that. So I think it's a really interesting perspective to have and to see and to hear. So I'm really excited. And also kind of, we're just going to talk about the transitions through life and how that affects us. Just because you're young and you're really fit doesn't mean you always stay that way. And life throws you curveballs, but God. So anyway, so that is in a nutshell what we're going to talk about. We are going to dive into the conversation. I want to first ask you about, did you perform growing up?
I actually didn't.
Okay.
My first real, the only performances that I did was like basic cheer in high school. That was it.
Okay.
And song squad. No, I lived in a real small town. And at the time they didn't really have dance classes. My parents worked full time and they weren't able to get us to and from, and there was 4 of us. So it was quite difficult for us. So literally my friend's yard, my friends' yards, anything that was on MTV, we would just duplicate and try to, emulate. And we picked it up as we went along. I remember watching the 1984 Olympics and Mary Lou Retton when she won. And I was just like, I'm going to be a gymnast, and I wanted to be a gymnast. And so I started to just tumble and, do that. And that was my basic performing, was to put on shows for my family.
That's awesome. I love that. Well, even though I did do ballet and acrobatics growing up, I still put on shows for my family too. So,
absolutely.
And my dog.
In your room by yourself. It's where you get your start. That's it.
Yeah.
That's it.
So you weren't a performer per se growing up, but you were a cheerleader. I'm sure that has some type of focus on your body a little bit.
I actually encountered a really amazing, it was during our PE time during school, that I took dance, that would be my like dance lessons, but it was a PE class taught by a woman who really wasn't like a full-time teacher, she just, or a dance instructor, but she was amazing. And her name was Holly Romero, and I loved her. And she, actually thinking back, she may have been an accredited dance teacher, but I don't recall that. She was always a PE teacher, so and she never taught anywhere else. So, but she challenged us often to find music that moved you and find something that inspired you and go with it. She would give us an opportunity to attend, different dance conventions back in the 90s when it was a really big thing, like from Maine and things like that. So as soon as I got into high school, I made the JV cheer squad first. Then I felt like, okay, this is something I can do. Okay, keep in mind, I was an introvert. I know that is so hard to believe, but I was an introvert. I had glasses, braces, the whole gamut. So not only did I have like body image issues going on for me, but I also had like severe self-esteem issues, right?
Wow.
But the one thing I knew I loved to do was to dance and to perform. And I was always comparing myself to other women because they all grew up in that area at the local dance studio, tap dancing, ballet, jazz. So when I got into the cheer squad, I kind of just went for it, and I ended up making the JV cheer team. And then the following year I made the varsity squad, but then I made the varsity song squad, and that was about the dancing. That was more dancing than cheering and lifting, throwing, because I was always the base, because I was the tallest and kind of like the girthiest girl out there. And, I was just like, I could lift you up and Hercules you up in the air. So that was fun.
Did that give you more confidence when you made the cheer squad? Did you feel like you kind of gained confidence with that?
It did. It did until, you get some of the girls who were from the other, side of the tracks, I always call it, because they were from the very privileged lifestyle where they lived in, a gated community and lived, posh life. Until they started seeing that I was, the other girl from the other side of the tracks who didn't take dance all the time. And I was basically at the same level performing with them. They didn't like that very much. So, I hit a lot of resistance. I heard a lot of, back talk and smack. And then of course I ended up with a boyfriend. I don't know how that happened, but I ended up with a boyfriend who was very jealous and was like, you can't wear your uniform to school and you can't do those things because
Oh
that's
my
too
gosh.
short. I don't like it. And so I was very afflicted with both sides. Like, it's like, I
Yeah.
have to wear my uniform to school because that's what I'm supposed to do. I'm going to get in trouble
Right.
from my advisor if I don't. And, and it just got to be like a struggle for me. So then I danced and I loved it, but I didn't dive in as much as I could have, which really hurts my heart now thinking back, because it's like woulda, coulda, shoulda kind of thing. But I can't regret it because all the things that I learned from Holly and the things that I learned from even cheer advisors, just kind of propelled me. But I did love it. I wish that I would have believed in myself a little bit more to be able to go further.
I think it's so interesting because when you're in high school and that just feels so like your whole world, right? It's everything. And you're insecure. If you guys have seen my post about this or you're watching on YouTube, you'll be seeing a picture of Jen. So you will laugh that she said that she was awkward and had braces and glasses and felt awkward because Jen is absolutely beautiful. Even the most beautiful girls feel insecure. Grass is always greener, seems like, on the other side.
So let me interject this. I did not have a big body. When I say I was like Herculean size, I always had very broad shoulders and a small waist. And I was, no joke, a size like 2 to 4. So I was not a big girl, right? But in my mind, because my breasts were already at that age, almost a triple D, I had huge gargantuan breasts. And that was always my issue, was wearing clothes that would fit me, but they were always too big. So I always looked in pictures bigger than I was, and because the clothes couldn't fit, or I was embarrassed about my bust line and always got the wrong kind of attention from the guys at school or from the wrong guys that I didn't want the attention from, like the ones that I did. It was like, well, hey, you're not looking over here. What's going on?
Right. Exactly.
But that was always a struggle. And even through my years at Disney dancing, you're trying to dance in a ballet show. It's impossible because most of the leotards are backless and they don't allow for a bra. And I'm like, well, guys, this is not that kind of after 5 show.
We need to keep it a family show. And well, and even for me, when I was a professional acrobat, my boobs would go up and down. Like when I was doing a lot of shows and a lot of hours, my boobs would get smaller. And then when we were done with our summer contract or whatever, my boobs would get a little bit bigger. But mainly for me as an acrobat, I felt self-conscious with my lats because I always had to do the same thing with clothes where I'd have to get something that fit my lats. But then it would hang wide on me. And so it was such a weird, and then I always would look at I would look at pictures of myself and be like, oh, that doesn't look very good. Now, like in a unitard, you could see that I was thin under those lats. Yeah. But if you have anything as large at the top, your boobs or your lats or your shoulders, it is very difficult to have a silhouette. Oh, hey. Yeah, I actually have a silhouette.
And that was the thing. Thankfully later in the late 90s, a lot of the clothing, especially when I started to gain some weight, a lot of the clothing fell into that category that was very body conscious friendly. I guess it was very acceptable to wear the muumuus, and it was getting more acceptable to wear like the baby doll dresses that kind of fit right under your bust line, and then it was the unpure waist, and then a little bit of your waist, and then kind of flared out. So that was good, but and other times it was like I just continued to layer with gigantic sweatshirts.
Yeah. Well, and so when do you think was the first time that you felt like you compared yourself? Was it when you got into cheerleading or was it before?
I remember my mom taking me to get a bra because she didn't realize that I needed one because, as I said before, I always wore gigantic sweatshirts. So when I had to go to a dance, we were trying on dresses and she noticed how I was spilling out of all of the size 2, size 4s, that I literally had to go to a size 10, 12 and then have it taken in. And so she thought, well, maybe we need to get you a bra. And she said something, and I know that it wasn't an intentional thing because my mom also has large breasts, but it just was something that kind of struck me. And so when I started going to school the next couple of days wearing this bra, obviously things were fitting a little better, because I had some support. And I just noticed that people started whispering. And it was that uncomfortable feeling. And it's like, are they talking about me? I wasn't sure. And then you're not sure and you start to freak yourself out. And, everything in your subconscious is just like, just don't look, just don't look, just don't look. But, it really got to be like the whispers got to be notes. And then I found a note or I heard some comments, or then somebody would have, some jerk person would come up and be bold and go, oh, hey, I heard this, blah, 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 and kids are just so terribly mean and they don't think about the repercussions later in life or what it's going to cause someone. And I mean, if had any of them actually just had a conversation with me, they would have realized that that is not the person that they were making me out. I think it was really around 7th or 8th grade that kind of started to ramp up. But then in high school was treacherous. It's always been treacherous.
Yeah. Well, and girls are so mean. And I talk about that a little bit in the episode where kind of talk about my body image stuff. I feel like it's crazy because as a girl, when you get boobs or you see a woman with breasts, you're like, oh, okay. Like when I get older, I'm going to get boobs. And that's like, it seems kind of fun, right? Like, okay, that's like the next thing I'm going to step into. And I know a lot of women who were self-conscious, who didn't have boobs, who never got them, especially being in dance. There was a lot of girls who were very flat and continued to stay flat. It does make you self-conscious when you're that younger age because people get jealous. People are also jealous and they don't know it's something different. And so they're like, wait a minute, what's this? It's definitely difficult. I share in my episode 17 about the first time that I remember, and I was about 12. And I went to a junior high youth group. We went to the lake. And I remember I went with my mom to Mervyn's to pick out a new bathing suit because I needed a one piece because it's, youth group. Yeah. There was this tie-dye blue one piece. And I was like, oh, it's so cute. I love it. And so I was so excited to wear it. And I had a pool in my backyard. I wore bikinis all the time. I was tiny. I was probably a size 0, 1 at the time. And I remember this girl who was much tinier than me takes off her cover. And I knew her. She wasn't like a good friend or anything, and she was a kind girl actually, but she took off her cover and she had the same suit on. And I was like, oh, and I already had boobs and I felt, and I was starting to get hips already. And so I looked
already.
Yeah. And she just still basically had a little girl body.
Yeah, she hadn't hit puberty at all.
Right. And so, but that was the first time. And I remember thinking, oh, she looks better in her suit than I do. And I thought, and I think back to that and I think, gosh, I'm so sad that that's the case. I'm so sad that is because I look at my nieces and little girls who are in my life and I think I don't want them to have that.
It is hard. It's hard to convince ourselves to really give ourselves that, trust in that this is good. Keep going.
Yes. And, and the enemy starts young and
it does.
Just and it's a good reminder because we definitely all still battle it. And it's smart to remember with your words, the younger generation that you're around, what you say, to make sure your words are lifting. And because it's a hard time, let's all remember how hard high school, junior high was.
It is. I agree. 100%.
Hey guys, I'm here with my hubby. And as you know, we are super passionate about equipping people to thrive in marriage.
One of the best ways you can do that is by having premarital counseling. We did it, and it was super helpful in learning how to communicate and dive into subjects that should be discussed before you reach the altar.
Many couples are finding it unnecessary or are not plugged into a good church where they can find good counsel in that area. Or they just think counseling is for couples with problems, and that couldn't be further from the truth.
We are excited to announce a new project we are working on. We will be offering an online premarital guidance course that you can purchase and access on your schedule.
We think everyone should go into marriage with the right tools to thrive and not just survive. We don't have a launch date just yet, but stay tuned to hear more on the podcast, which, by the way, will now be airing an episode every week.
And now, back to the show.
Was Disney your first professional job?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
My aunt actually called and just saw a line outside. She had no idea what it was for. So she called me and said, hey, I think you should come out here. I was living in Lake Elsinore, which is super far away.
Yeah.
And so my mom actually drove me out there, just dropped me off. I jumped in line I didn't even know what I was auditioning for, but I just saw an audition line and it ended up being fantastic. Wow. So I stayed there and I got my first job in Fantastic that night. So that was an exciting moment. And that was for me where one was battling my own self, standing in line, because I'm like, these people are probably professional dancers. They dance their whole lives. And I'm only here because I just love it. And I'm wearing this awful Marika, like two-tone brown, black, like one side was black, one side was brown. Then the chest was black on the other side, blocked out like leotard.
Yes.
That I was super proud of at the time, and all these other girls were in like crop tops and like, professional dance clothes from the 90s, where they're like in leggings and, trunks and things like that. And here I am just like completely covered up to my neck. Well, this is me. And then when I got in, there were so many people and I was so overwhelmed. It kind of gave me that, like, should I just go and leave right now or just go home? And then I thought, no, I'm just, I'm going to see what it's like and have fun. I'm just going to have fun. And that's when I kind of switched that in my mind and tell myself, just go have fun. Who cares? You're probably not going to get hired anyway. Mm-hmm. It's being a pessimist, but it's also being the one, that's the only way that I was going to stay and get through it.
Right.
And as I went through the dance call, as you know, and for those of you out there that don't, when you go through the first, Disney dance calls back in the day, it was this cute character cut, they called it. And it was like, da, 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 like zippy-doo-dah. And you're just doing like wizards and little, like, step turns and very easy basic steps, but it has to be sharp. It has to be precise and, and very, overly animated. Yeah. And being the introvert at the time, I knew how to do that. But I didn't always do that because I thought that was going to draw more attention to myself. Yeah. But I thought, well, if this is the place to use it, this is the place to use it because you need to draw attention to yourself at this moment. And so I just kind of shut off all my emotions and I went for it. And I ended up getting that. And so once I started working at Disney and once I started getting into the costumes and I was actually, friends with lots of lovely roles there and got to play a vast, variety of like costumes that I was involved in. Some were very revealing, where like my entire abdomen was showing at times, like during the Aladdin parade. Oh my gosh, that was like, I'm so out of my comfort zone. This is so hard for me to dance and perform and then sit where I was like, I don't want any creases. I want to sit straight. I don't want to have anything fall over my costume,
Well, in Aladdin parade, having two-piece and you're having a large chest.
Yeah. It was freaking me out. I was like,
dancing down the parade route.
I mean, imagine in your mind, if you will, it's basically like in the 1990s when you had like the short-sleeved crop top, right? It was like a bra top. And then I had literally gold bikini bottoms on with a skirt that wrapped around but was completely open in the front.
Oh my gosh.
I'm dancing down the street in a bikini. Yeah. Let's be real.
Yeah. To all of Southern California and the world that is coming to watch and coming for vacation.
Yeah. It's horrible. But, actually getting the job and going there, it pushed me out of my comfort zone. I learned how to be more vocal. That's where I became me. I came out of it. And it was hard to, again, like you said, seeing these other girls, they take off their cover, they take off their thing, and they've got these amazing, incredible dance bodies, and they've got muscles, and, they've got like a six-pack, and you're just like, wow, I'm a little like doughy in the middle, but that's okay. It's okay. I'm still a size 4, that's my mindset. I'm still small. I can still put my clothes on in the morning and, but it does trick you. It really does trick you. And it takes you on this like mind game.
Mm-hmm. It really does. And it's just in your face all day, every day. It's just an opportunity at any point for the enemy to really just come in. Totally. Oh, wow, you don't look good in that. It is so crazy to me when I think about the times in my life. Like, I think, man, I wish I was as big as I was when I thought I was too big 15 years ago.
I forever had a picture of myself on the refrigerator, and I said, "Remember when you thought you were fat?"
Yeah, yes, exactly.
And that was during like my weight loss phase when I was going back trying to lose some weight, because it was just like, yeah, that's stupid. Don't kill yourself over it to try to be that again. It's just more in the mindset, just be healthy and be happy in your body and who you are. That's a really hard thing for women to do for themselves. We cannot give ourselves grace in that way.
No, because it's hard to look and say, this is good.
Well, in our media, just putting up magazines for our whole lives. I remember looking at models, Claudia Schiffer, Paulina Porotskova, all these beautiful models, these guest models, all these now quote unquote Victoria's Secret models, if you will, and they're perfectly beautiful bodies. So those women do have great bodies because they're walking a runway. But back in the day with us, when there was a little bit of editing, those women were beautiful, but they take those magazines and they stretch and pull and tuck and nip. And, there's a whole lot of that going on too, because I'm pretty sure that those people were not touched that much by the grace of God. I mean, yes, you were given a little dose, ladies, but not that much to where you became a different level than me. And I think that was my problem, is I looked at them as if they were on this pedestal for the longest time and thought, that's for a woman, that's what everybody likes, that's what I have to be.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And with that, we have hormonal changes. You're dancing at Disney. You're battling with all of these things in your mind, but having fun. Let's talk about, how was it once you had kids? Were you able to get back into shape after you had your children?
With both of my kids, I have a son now that's 17. He's graduating senior. And with him, I was dancing at the time in the electrical parade, and I danced in court, which, those dresses are probably about 25 pounds because of the battery packs. And I danced with him. I think I made it a month, and then I was put into a role where I had to just stand and look pretty and lead off the parade, if you know what I mean.
Yep.
And where
we're not going to give away any Disney magic here, but but you could probably gather that some of the characters, we've both been very good friends with, you would recognize. So
correct. So then I was placed to just look pretty for the last couple of weeks. And then finally it was getting harder for me to, get into the apparatus that I was required to climb. My belly was just too big. So that was fine. And I still was wearing all of my own regular clothes, my own regular jeans. Like I just fit into regular clothes. It wasn't a big deal because I was dancing full time. I was going to school for hair and makeup full time. So I was a busy girl. I was up at 6 o'clock in the morning. I was going to bed at midnight, and I had a baby in my body, and it was like, oh my gosh, whatever. Yeah. So I then with my second daughter was kind of when I noticed my changes, because in between my son and my daughter, who's now she's 14, will be 14. There was that span of time. So after I had given birth to Cooper, I noticed things stared to change, and I noticed that.
How old were you when you gave birth?
I was 30 with him. Okay. I was 30. Oh my Lord. It's such a weird thing to say that I was 30 and he's graduating high school. It's like, where did the time go? Sorry. So when I was 30, already that's a progressive time in a woman's life where you feel this is
major
where a lot
changes.
of changes come in. Yeah. And I had a baby, and then being able to be so active and be so fortunate and to be so healthy the entire time, going into that, I had the greatest pregnancy. I was never sick. I didn't have any serious weight gain. Actually, the doctors kept saying, I think you can put on some more weight. You can put on some more weight. And it wasn't an intentional thing that I was trying not to lose, not
you were eating, you were just healthy.
I eating? Holy moly, in and out, everything. I mean, my metabolism was just like on hyperdrive right then. So then I thought, well, okay, that's fine. But then I started to get headaches after he was born. And I noticed that it was really hard for me in the very beginning to start breastfeeding him. And I thought, okay, wait a minute. You're telling me that I lug these huge gargantuan boobs around my whole life, and now I can't breastfeed what they're intended to do? I would have cut them off a long time ago. And I was so furious that I was like, you're joking, right? This is a joke. And I had to go in and get a lactation consultant, and she came in, and they get all up in your business, man. They don't even introduce themselves. It's like, rah, 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 right? Like, nice to meet you. What's your name? Okay. As you are holding my breast in your hand. But she thought I might have had, like a block duct or this kind of thing or that kind of thing. So we went through this, a whole round of testing and whatnot. And all the while, my poor baby, I'm trying to breastfeed him, and it got to a point where I had to switch to formula, and I was so heartbroken because it's like, no, I want that moment. I don't want to be ripped of this. Like, this does not make me feel like an adequate mother. And I looked down, and I have this love for vampires, but when I looked down and I saw that my child who was suckling on my breast came out with a mouthful of blood, I was like, okay, we're done. We're done. Yeah. We're done. Can't give you anything. And you are literally sucking blood out of my breast. This is not okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
So then he got thrush, and all these other things happened. And it was just like, he's miserable. Yeah. So I kind of went to the doctor, and I said, I just don't feel right. And she's like, well, you would just probably have the baby blues. It's okay because, that happens. You get, a lot of people can't breastfeed. And I'm like, but this is a joke, right? I mean, just through the gamut. I had gone through testing through this time. About a year later, about 18 months later, I'd say, later, I got to a point where even with my husband, I couldn't stand to be in the same room with him. he was like my red flag. Like I was the bull and he was the red flag for me. Every time he walked in the room, whether or not, he liked it or not, I just was angry. And it could have been even like, I wanted to share something joyful and something that happened to me that day in my mind. But the minute he walked in, it was like a trigger for me. And I thought, this is insanity. This is the person that I have been in love with since the day I met him. Why do I not like him? So that was like even more cause for concern. And called the doctor again. I said, listen, something's going on in my brain. I am hearing myself talk to myself. I don't like what it's saying. I feel like I'm going crazy. I almost wanted to like check myself into a facility because I thought like, somebody needs to put me on a 5150 hold. I am crazy right now. Like, this is nuts.
Well, and it's so good that you noticed that something was off.
Right. But it was hard. And finally, I went back to my OBGYN, believe it or not. And I just told her, I said, dude, this is how we talk to each other. Dude, this is what's going on. I said, I can't even believe it. And she just was like, well, then let me just run some tests. If your other doctors couldn't find anything, let me run some tests. Let me see what I can find. And she calls me back and she goes, hey, I'm just going to send you in for an MRI real quick. I want to see what's going on. Maybe there's something we're missing. And I go, okay, great. So she sends me into blood work and she calls me back like immediately. And she said, hey, your numbers are a little bit off. And that's when she, sent me in for the MRI and she goes, so I don't understand why they would say, nothing was going on. They should have seen this. And I said, well, they didn't. So I'm glad you did. So let's figure out what it is. And then I'll report back. She goes, or I could just, do it for you. So I just went with her since she's the one that kind of realized that something was going on. I felt more comfortable knowing that she was going to be, Inspector Gadget on it all and like find the root source of it. And so upon, going, getting that MRI, if anyone's had an MRI, you don't get a result of the day of. So you just go in thinking, okay, I'll wait a couple days, maybe a week, I'll get these results. And so I go in, I remember coming home, I had my son, he was 18 months old. It was plain as day. I sat him down from walking in the door. I sat at my computer desk. I put him on the floor. He's playing with his trucks and his trains. And I remember thinking in that moment, you have those like God moments where the sun's shining through like the blinds and it's laying on your child and you're just so thankful and you're like, oh my gosh, he's so beautiful. And I'm so thankful, Lord. Thank you so much for blessing me. Even though there's so much trial and tribulation right now, like I had to take that moment and go, thank you for this. I can't wait to know what the answer is so that I can fix this and just kind of get back to being me because I was renouncing God in so many ways. But at that moment, it almost felt like there was a calm over me. And at that moment, I got a phone call and it was my doctor. And she's like, hey, it's Miss Dr. K. And I go, oh, hey, did I forget something? I thought maybe I forgot the baby's toy or something in your office. She goes, no, I actually got your MRI results. And I was like, oh, my heart sank. Like, that doesn't happen.
You're calling
that doesn't
so
happen.
quick.
Oh God, that doesn't happen. And I said, what happened? She goes, well, I mean, she just basically told me, she said, you have a tumor and it's kind of big, but well, it's the biggest one I've seen. She goes, and I'm not real familiar with this, but I've already contacted a couple other doctors, endocrinologists. They said it's fine, but I did make you an appointment. Can you go tomorrow morning to see this endocrinologist because he thinks he can control it? And I was like, yes. She said, great. So I called Dean and I was like, oh my gosh, you need to come home. Really bad news. And he came home from the fire department. I was crying and I'm thinking, oh my gosh, I have cancer. I have a tumor in my breast. Like she didn't say where, and because I can't breastfeed and I had this problem. It's all in my breast. Oh my gosh, I'm going to have breast cancer. There's going to be something crazy. And my brain is just spinning.
Oh my gosh.
And so long story short, next day we go to see this endocrinologist. He gives me this medication that says it's going to shrink this tumor. And I'm thinking, what is happening? Like, why am I taking medication? I don't understand. How is it going to shrink it in my breast? And he goes, well, it's not in your breast. It's in your brain. And my jaw hit the floor. I was in tears. I'm like, wait a minute. I have a brain tumor? I have a brain tumor. I'm freaking out. Like, I have a brain tumor. I turned into Sally Fields from, Still Magnolias. I gotta go. I have so much to do. I have to get everything in order. I'm going to die. That was my first initial thought. I'm going to die. I have an 18-month-old. I have a brain tumor. I don't have a living trust. I don't have a will. I don't have anything set up. Oh my gosh, I have so much to do. Give me the pills. I got to go, And literally I took the pills. I went home. He said to start with half a dose. I was vomiting, you guys, so badly that night. My body was fully rejecting it. And I just kept pushing through, trying to take the next dose, spending the entire night in the bathroom next to the toilet, throwing up, sleeping on the floor. 3 days. I did not leave the bathroom for 3 days. I slept in there and I laid on the floor. I had a bed in there. I had my water in there, and I was barfing for 3 days. And I'm like, third day, I'm looking down, and my ribs on the outside were physically bruised from the sheer force of clenching my muscles so many times. I was bruised outside. And I thought, no, I cannot do this. There has to be another alternative.
Yeah.
So Dean and I called the doctor, and he said, well, you can't just stop the medicine cold turkey. It's something you have to continue to do. And I said, I can't take it anymore. I can't function as a human.
Yeah.
This is not okay. I'm throwing up. And then they realized that I was consistently throwing up. So he said, okay, go ahead and stop the medication. He goes, unfortunately, we're going to have to try something else. So my husband went to work that next day. My mom came over to stay with me. And this is such a godsend because he happened to be down doing a water drill at the port, and he ran into another firefighter who had a malignant brain tumor, and he was just leaving for his leave. And my husband told him, oh my gosh, my wife was just diagnosed with a brain tumor, and we're looking to try to use medication, but that wasn't working. And now we need to probably have it removed and find a neurologist that can, a neurosurgeon that can fix that for us. And he's like, oh my gosh, I have the best one. Let me give you his name and number. You have to give him, months in advance because it takes so long to get an appointment. But here's his information. Run right now. Tell your wife to overnight her phone.
Right now. Yeah.
Right now. So literally Dean ran up back to the building, sent me the number. I got on the phone. My mom helped me. We overnight, you have to get a courier to come to your house. That was back in the day. We didn't have just, here, let me just send you a screenshot. Because computers weren't as advanced. So I had to take my actual DVDs, put them in an envelope, get a courier and send them off. And the courier took them overnight same day, to the offices. That next morning, I received a phone call from their office stating that they received my films and that it was good. And I was like, okay, good. That was because I had asked for confirmation upon receival. And she said, and actually we have an appointment for you tomorrow. Is that possible for you to come in? We have an appointment tomorrow. And I'm thinking, wait a minute. Wait. Hank said it takes months to get an appointment. What happened? And I asked her, I said, wait, did somebody just cancel? She goes, well, no, but the doctor saw your scans and we feel that it's important to get you in. Okay, you guys, that point, when you get two doctors, you get an MRI back the same day. You're not being told very much. Then you get your scans looked at by a neurologist or a neurosurgeon who's like, yep, we have an appointment for you, but normally we don't take you for 3 months. That freaked me out. And the last thing she said to me was, please don't do anything super active. Don't bend over. Don't sneeze. Oh my gosh. What does that mean? Can somebody please tell me what does that mean?
Don't bend over. I have an 18-month-old.
I have an 18-month-old. I have
a husband who works as a firefighter who's gone all night and all day.
So I had to call out from Disney and tell them I was sick, but it was like, I don't know what's wrong with me, but I'm sick. I have a brain tumor, but I don't know why I can't work, kind of thing. Yeah. It was so baffling to me. So I go up and I meet with this neurosurgeon. He seems so cool. His name is Dr. Daniel Kelly, and he was from, at the time, UCLA Medical Center.
That was my mom's doctor too.
He's amazing. I mean, without having a love affair for anybody else other than my husband, I love this man.
He's incredible.
He is. And his bedside manner is amazing. And we were sitting in the meeting and he was saying, oh yeah, it's no big deal. It's no big deal. Totally reassuring me, like, it's no big deal. Everybody else is freaking you out. It's no big deal. You're good. But then sitting down, having to sign like a do not resuscitate order, or how do you want to go because the death could possibly happen on the table during the surgery. Do you want to have surgery? And all these questions are coming at me. And all I can think about is I have an 18-month-old at home. I have nothing prepared. I am not prepared. God, I don't know what to do. And he said, let me go check, see. And I said, well, I want to have surgery. I want to have it taken out if we can. Mm-hmm. He said, let me go talk to my assistant, figure out a date. I'll come right back to you guys. Sign these papers, have a moment, take a moment to yourselves to talk. I'll give you a minute. He's walking out just out the door. I mean, just her desk is like literally an eye shot. I can see them and I can hear them. And my husband and I are discussing like about the will and how to do not resuscitate. Do I sign a do not resuscitate order? Do I want to, all that? You just don't, you're not ready for that. And the minute he was talking about, I could hear them talking about, well, we got to get her in soon. And she said, his assistant looked up at him and said, Dr. Kelly, the only thing you have is like this week, but that's the week you're supposed to be in Hawaii with your family. And he said, okay, then call my wife and cancel the trip and tell her we have to move it. And I have to get this woman into surgery. I was just like in
that tears. Like gives me chills right now.
Because people don't do that. People don't do that. Doctors don't do that.
Kind.
He is
He's
so
so compassionate.
Ugh.
And like I said, my mom had the same kind of brain tumor as Jen did.
For me, it was such a weird, uncommon to me procedure like that. Who ever heard of a pituitary adenoma? What is that? You know? And then all of a sudden, the more and more I researched it, it was like, oh, this is super common. Well, it's really not. But why is there not more information readily available for women who have this? Yes. So with Dr. Kelly, he scheduled us out. He got us going. He came back in instantly. I signed the paperwork because I was like, I trust this man implicitly. I got my surgery, and life since then has been just great. I had a snafu about 3 weeks after the surgery where I had an artery burst. I mean, that was a small little snafu.
Oh my gosh, an artery.
Bleeding
from
nose,
small
mouth,
thing,
ears,
just a little thing,
a little bit. I'm home with my 18-month-old now, or whatever he is at that age. And so from like diagnosis to surgery date, it was like, no joke, you guys, a whirlwind of like 3 weeks. 3 weeks. It was craziness. And I basically had that one where I went, home, and then I ended up getting, like I said, the artery burst, and I was my first day back alone with the baby. My husband had just gone back to work, and I had, beautiful family members all helping me, neighborhood reaching up, just the whole thing. It was great. So it was long. It was a long journey. It was something that, just changed me. And going back to Disneyland after that, I'm just going to go into that. Just going back into Disneyland after that, it was eye-opening for me to try to like dance now, knowing that I have a different body. I have a different way. Because as soon as that happened, I put on weight. I couldn't understand why I was putting on weight. I didn't know what was going on. And
especially since the tumor was gone, right? So like in your mind, you would think, I have a tumor I have a tumor that's messing me up. Now it's gone. So now I should be great.
And really like that during that time, and I didn't preface it before, I'm sorry. During that time of before being diagnosed, I did start, after I had the baby, I thought, oh great, I'm going to be like bounced back right away. This is going to be great. I even joined Weight Watchers because I thought, just because I want to be on a good eating plan, I want to get healthy as soon as I can, even though I only gained like 22 pounds, with my child. I just want to be ready to go, back in my Disney clothes. And each month after, I was putting on 10 pounds. So you can imagine, I gained probably like 60 pounds before I figured this out. And that is not me. I was like, what is happening? I'm turning into gosh. The Oompa Loompa. I'm blowing up quickly, like Violet Beauregard, it was horrible. Turning into a blueberry. Awful.
Had you already gone back to Disney, or were you still on like?
Well, after I had gotten diagnosed, and she was like, don't dance, don't do anything, that's when I kind of called quits. And then 3 weeks later, I was in surgery. So for 3 weeks, I had taken a leave, but I was dancing all the way up until that time. And my costumes were getting a little snug, and they were, not fitting me as nicely. And luckily, I knew enough of the ladies and the seamstresses, and they were super kind to me. They would just kind of let it out, or find me another one that would fit and make it work, or I would just, I got so desperate that I started to wear like a bra, and then I would duct tape myself down, and then put another bra on, and duct tape myself down. And then I put a leotard on, and then I would duct tape my waistline just to try to hold myself in so that I could fit into my costumes. And, the things you do, the struggles you do behind eyes, because I didn't want the girls in the dressing room to see that. And so that I'd come out with my robe on, and, or I'd come out with my costume on because I'd go in the bathroom and change. And that was never me. I was never afraid to change in front of the girls, but
well, and you generally did. So for anybody listening, there's men's and women's changing rooms, and they're big, giant open rooms with mirrors and little shelves for you to put stuff on, and benches so you can sit down. And then there's a bathroom with showers and things like that. And there are stalls, so you could go in, but almost nobody does, just because.
And they kind of encouraged it because they wanted the restrooms being used for what they were intended for, not taken up by people changing their clothes. Exactly. But they weren't very conscientious about that time for people who were overly conscientious about their body.
So did you figure out what the reason was that you were gaining weight so rapidly?
So it was a prolactinoma, which basically was feeding off of the prolactin that was present in my body. So it was a tumor that was feeding off of when I was, basically my body thought I was still pregnant after having a baby, which is weird. So the entire time, in the last month of pregnancy, you kind of put on like 10 pounds. That's usually how it goes. So each month, that's what my body was doing. Oh, we have to put on another 10 pounds because we're not there yet. We still have the baby on board. Oh, it's like a broken record. And I was on repeat. repeat. It was like Groundhog's Day in my brain. So it just didn't understand because I didn't get to have a natural vaginal birth. I had to have an emergency cesarean section.
Mm-hmm.
So that I think was what triggered it. And she said, I think your hormones were just kind of wackadoodle at the time anyway. You already had the brain tumor going in to the pregnancy.
Oh, yeah.
So when I got into the UCLA Medical Center and I was laying there, I remember being berated by the staff, and they were doing rounds in the morning of all their medical, up and comers, their residents. And it felt like I was in an episode of Grey's Anatomy where they're like, Jennifer Tomasick, age, they're giving me the whole thing, presented with this, had a brain tumor removal. We have it for testing because I donated it all to science to test and see if it would stain against other cancers or whatnot. And when I got the news, I was nervous because originally they said there was a mass in my brain at the MRI that looked solid. And usually when it's a benign tumor, it has a little ring of water around it. That's how they kind of know. And mine was just a solid mass. So that's where they all were freaking out, thinking that I had this gigantic 4 millimeter ball in my head, of solid mass in my head. So that was what the whole concern was. And really, it was just pressing on my pituitary gland, which that's the master gland. It's that little tiny pea at the base of your neck and in your brain. And it just was wreaking havoc on my whole body. So when he went in and removed it, he had to go transsphenoidal. So he went through my nose into the brain. And he said, as soon as I touched your skull cavity, I didn't with the laser because they went in transsphenoidal and all with like technology now. He said, I made a little cut and he goes, I barely had to touch it and it shattered. He said, that's why we were worried because you were a ticking time bomb ready to go off. Had I fallen, hit my head, anything removed, I would have been lights out. It would have been whatever. And the tumor was centered between my carotid arteries, which it was presenting leaning towards the right side. So it was almost closing off one of the carotid arteries. And you all know medical, you kind of need those blood flow to stay alive. So
small thing. So the weight gain though, did it have anything to do with the brain? With the brain tumor, they thought it was because you had it in there while you had the baby and because you had a C-section. And like a C-section basically sometimes causes issues because your body isn't like releasing everything like it normally does in a vaginal, right? Like hormones and stuff kind of flush.
So yeah, and it also, it's like a mind trickery because when you have a baby, you're pushing and there's the aggression and you're like, and then you got to push it out. I didn't have any of that. I was like sitting back with my cigarette and my champagne going, oh, are we done? Oh, great. Okay, awesome. So there was no strife. I mean, there was stress because obviously having your legs flung over your head and, having your legs flung over your head and everybody cut up in your hoo-ha, sticking probes and grabbing things. And they're freaking out going, I lost the heartbeat. And that's all you're hearing. You're like, no.
Get the baby out. Get him out.
Get him out now. Get him out now. And then they paraded my entire family in the room and said, just say goodbyes. And I'm like, wait, what? Say goodbyes? You guys think I'm going to die? This is not good. So, you're panicked, but you just don't get the same experience as having a vaginal birth, which is really hard, and afterwards, that's why I think a lot of women who've had cesareans, and I think Brooke Shields was the one that wrote Down Came the Rain. It was a book about her having the baby blues severely and it affected her. And I think it was because she had cesarean section. You don't have the full birthing flow.
It's like how God designed for your body to be able to bounce back and cope.
Yeah. And so you don't have that whole process. So you just kind of like, wait, something's missing. And it just feels like something's consistently missing. So I think that was hard for me. But, after having the brain tumor and having the weight gain, having it removed, I thought, okay, this is going to make such great strides. It really didn't. And I was able to go back and dance, but I never really fully returned. I think after you have a baby anyway, your body just changes so much that you're never going to go back to the amazing size you were.
Right.
If you are,
age too. Like age changes, like we said.
Now I'm like almost 33, with my second child. And I was able to go back and dance, thank God. And luckily after the surgery removal, my goal was that I was going to be able to have children. And that was one of the possibilities, is that he said, you may not ever be able to have a child again. So you may not be able to get pregnant, because they were really baffled. Like I said, with the doctors that were, berating me about the Grey's Anatomy folk, they just were convinced that I took, they were just stating, there's no way you could have held this baby this entire time with your condition and with standings. There's just no way you could have had this this baby. And I said, okay, well, I don't know what to tell you guys. And I was at a loss for words. They kept asking me all these questions, and they were accusing me and saying, well, I don't believe you. You had to have done fertility. And I'm like, I don't even know the first thing about fertility. I know it's expensive, but I don't even know what it takes. And I said, and if I have to sit down and tell you guys how I got pregnant, then I'm pretty sure you're not intended to be in medical school. Okay, I'm sorry. We're not going back to the 80s.
Yeah.
And, they were like, well, no, we're not saying that. And I said, because I basically just had sex with my husband and I ended up getting pregnant. And I'm sorry. This is a point where you guys are going to have to understand that you're trying to leave it up to science. And I'm telling you that this is an act of God. I needed to have this baby in order to know that I had a brain tumor in my head that I had evidently had for over 7 years prior to getting pregnant, which I didn't know about. I had to have this baby. So that was God's way of saying, hey, lady, this is what's going on. Just so you know.
But I'm going to be faithful to your desire.
I'm going to give you this baby because I know that's what you want. I'm going to send down this beautiful angel that's going to take care of you and save your life. And he has every day, and he continues to do that. He's an amazing human. He's an amazing soul. The weirdest part of it is that he's like a reproduction of my brother, which freaks me out. And I often joke that I gave birth to my brother, which sounds so bizarre, but his mannerisms and everything is just like my brother. So I'm thankful every day and my brother's passed on. He passed on in 2001. So my son and my brother never got to meet each other. But I think they met in heaven before he was sent down to me. So
I think so too. Okay, friends, that's it for today. I'm truly grateful you joined us. If you think others would be encouraged by this episode, you can easily share it by taking a screenshot and adding it to your stories or feed. You can also text it to a friend. New episodes are available every Friday. Be sure to subscribe so you can catch them all. You can find and interact with me on Facebook and Instagram at Married Rogers Neighborhood, as well as my website, which I linked in the show notes. If you enjoyed the show today, I would so appreciate if you could take a second to rate and give a 5-star review. It helps more people find it, which makes a huge difference for me and the podcast. Just remember, we are in this together. God loves you, and you are not alone. See you next time.